Hey you guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking springtime jerkbaits. Flukes, soft jerkbaits, as well as traditional jerkbaits, and how you can apply both to your fishing to catch more bass in the spring. This is a really fun time of year because there are bass in almost every phase. If you're in the southern states, there's a whole lot of post-spawn going on, but there are still some spawners and still a handful of pre-spawners. The middle of the country, you're mostly looking at spawners with a little bit of both, and then up north, it's almost all pre-spawn. Maybe somebody's on a small fishery with some warm water, there's already some spawners, but for the most part it's pre-spawn. That makes this a fun time of year. Obviously you guys there in the middle who just got hit with a giant snowstorm, that's not so fun, but that'll blow off, temperatures will come back up, and you've got to remember that this time of year, if the bass get completely shut down like that and locked down where they can't spawn, they don't really want to eat, and they spend a few days like that, when they come out of that, they go crazy. They feed hard. It's almost like they're making up for lost time. So don't let that cold weather that came through the middle of the country keep you off the water. The second it's over, you want to be back out there. Now, today we're talking jerkbaits, and I can't believe we've made it this far into the spring and not really dived in depth on this subject. But a lot of that has to do with the way we bounced around the country this year and the timing just wasn't right. So 4 baits for you. Well, really it's 3 baits, but the Fluke fishes both extremes so well that we're going to talk about the Fluke or the soft jerkbait on both ends. So let's start there. Actually, we'll start with jerkbaits and we'll end on flukes because that is such an interesting topic. The jerkbait does an amazing job of getting fish to react, to respond, and that's why this is such a powerful tool in the spring. If you're pre-spawn, fish are coming up, they're starting to feed before they move up onto beds. Those fish are aggressive, they want to eat, they want to feed, and you can trigger aggressive responses out of them with a jerkbait. Well, the same is true in the post-spawn. You guys that are already ahead, your fish have spawned, they're backing back out. The same thing is true. Post-spawn fish, when they first come off beds, they're kind of in a lull. They'll sit around a lot, they don't eat that much. But again, a jerkbait does not require a fish to want to feed. It's one of a handful of baits that can actually trigger a feed response. It will make a fish react rather than see it, want to eat it, follow it around, bite it. There's a motion, there's a way it moves that just touches the core of a bass, and a bass will lash out at it whether or not it wants to. So whether you're pre-spawn or post-spawn, it really doesn't matter. The jerkbait is a great option for you. Post-spawn, there's an added bonus. When fish come out of that funk and they start to feed again, you'll start seeing that feeding on the surface. You know, you might be fishing the bank, you might be chasing spawners, and all of a sudden you'll hear splashing behind you, and you turn around and there's a bass or a group of bass out there chasing bait fish. Those are post-spawn fish that have backed back out, gone through the funk, and now they're getting aggressive again. And a jerkbait is dynamite for that. So is a topwater. Topwater is excellent. But some days they just don't seem to want the topwater. The jerkbait can still trigger those fish. And here's the added bonus of a jerkbait. It's getting down lower. A lot of times when you see busting fish like that or aggressive fish on the surface chasing bait, the biggest bass hang under those schools. My biggest fish ever on a jerkbait was 12.3 pounds. I caught it on a Lucky Craft pointer, on light line, light tackle, and it was in a school of fish, but it was under them. 12.3 pounds. A pointer is basically the same size as this re-range. It was unreal. That was a battle. But let's jump into it. Okay, there's 4 scenarios here. You've got heavy cover, then we've got windy days, days that it's rough out, then you've got days where it start calming down, water's a little bit clearer. Typically as we lean to the post spawn, the water will start to clear because you have less storms. Not always, but as a rule. And then you've got those true slick calm, mirror finish on the water days that can be brutal. You can apply these baits in all 4 scenarios. So I don't remember what order I said we were going to talk to them in, but let's do them in that exact order. Heavy cover, fish are up on the bank, they're right up tight, maybe they're around wood, maybe they're up around grass, or maybe they're just so shallow that you can't get most baits in there. That is where the soft jerkbait shines. Now you can throw a weedless swim bait up there, you could throw a topwater up there, but that jerkbait, again, you're trying to elicit a feed response. If a bass is mad and you swim a flashy swimmer and a Kitech right past them, they'll smash that thing. But if that bass is up there in those shallows and it's just laying around lethargic trying to get warm and not really feeding, and you walk a jerkbait over the top of them, in this case a soft jerkbait because of that shallow water and that cover, they'll lash out and ambush that thing. So the Super Fluke, this time of year, that's the one that I throw, a Zoom Super Fluke, and I throw it on a super line hook. It's a Gamakatsu 4-aught EWG super line. That's the hook for the job. I throw that because there's a chance this time of year that you're going to hook a giant. And if you hook a giant, a super line hook will go a long ways to helping you get that fish in the boat without getting bent out. So you Texas rig it, bury that hook point, and you can fish that right up in that shallow cover. And we fish it on a twitch and a pause cadence. So twitch, twitch, pause, twitch, pause, twitch, 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 pause. Either 1, 2, or 3 jerks of the rod tip and then slack. So that bait will dart and then glide. And in the case of the soft jerkbait, slowly sink. And those fish will lash out on that thing. I had a fantastic spring throwing a soft jerkbait. We caught a lot of fish. You guys, if you remember the raw video we did down in Florida, caught a bunch of jerkbait fish there. That is a dynamite way to catch them. Now, backing away from the bank a little bit, because not all the fish are up there dirt shallow. That's where the rest of this is going to shine. If it's really choppy, you got a windy day, there's waves, there's a big ripple on the water, maybe there's current, that's when I turn to a re-range. Re-range comes in a couple of colors that have a ton of flash and a ton of shine. And that's the one that I turn to because, one, it's loud, makes a ton of racket, and the way the body is shaped, it's wider in the back than the belly. So the body's actually kind of shaped like this if you're looking at it head on. Because of that, when you rip it, it doesn't just rip and stop, it rolls. It rolls and turns and it just shines light. So if you haven't thrown a re-range, you don't know what I'm talking about, but it will just shine light out there. The only other bait that I fish a lot that does that same thing is a Lucky Craft flash pointer. But the re-range, the last couple of years, in those couple of really bright, bold colors that really shine, they're so reflective, has just taken over for me. And I'll link all these baits in the video description along with the rods. And rods are important, especially this one, because the X-Pride 610 medium, as of today, is actually back in stock, believe it or not. They're always sold out. That is my favorite jerkbait rod at any price ever. And it's actually in stock in a year where you can't get anything. So I'll link rods, all that, but we'll come back to the rods. But that guy right there, if you've got a lot of chop on the water, that's where you go. On the days where it's a little bit calmer, not necessarily mirror slick, but calmer, just a little breeze. Sometimes when it's mirror slick, that's when I'm turning to the Megabass, the Vision 110. And I'll throw both a Vision 110 and a 110 Junior. Now this is actually the Junior +1, and the +1 means it has a little bit bigger lip and it dives a little bit deeper. They also make a +2. I don't really throw the 2 as we're going pre-spawn and post-spawn. That's more of a winter thing for me. I'll throw the 1 if the fish are out off the bank in more open water. I'll throw a 1 to get a little lower under them and to try and get that bigger bite. But otherwise, the vast majority of the time, I throw the standard Vision 110, okay? And then this is the Junior and this is the standard. So both come with a regular lip or a +1 lip. And the only difference there is size. Hopefully you can see the difference in the size. All you're gonna do there Hopefully you know a little bit about your fishery. You know what size bait fish you see up in the shallows. When bass are chasing bait in the open, you see the size of the bait jumping. Choose accordingly. If I'm on a lake that has bigger bait, I'm throwing the 110. If all I see is little tiny stuff, I'm throwing the junior. But this guy right here still has flash, but it is the most perfectly balanced jerkbait. They suspend extremely well. We talk about this bait half the year. The Vision 110 is unbelievable. It is hands down the best day in and day out jerkbait on the market. If you could only have one, that's the one. That re-range is unbelievable when you need flash and shine and movement. They just smash it. But day in and day out, I'm here. I pick up that re-range when I want to go over and above and get those fish to just react and lash out. So it's a 1-2 punch. But the Vision 110 comes in some amazing colors. Now I still want some flash because I'm typically throwing it in the ripple. So GP Pro Blue, Tennessee Shad, M Shad. There's a few colors that'll flash really well, but they're not totally chrome either. They still look really good and they will get bit. Then when it goes slick, if I'm throwing a jerkbait and it slicks off and my bite just dies, that is when we go to the nosed hook fluke. You guys knew that was coming. If you follow the channel, you knew that was coming because this is my bread and butter in the springtime. You take a standard Zoom Super Fluke or any other fluke. This is an owner CPS spring, the medium size. You screw it into the nose of that fluke until it disappears in there. A bass just chased bait out here behind the camera. So it's completely inside there. And then here I've got one hooked up. And then you take a finesse wide gap hook and you nose hook it. And that is the rig. If you guys have been sticking with us the last year or two, you've seen this fished, you've seen it underwater, you've seen fish react to it underwater, you've seen the way they eat it. When you're throwing a nose hook fluke, those fish come in and eat a fluke. 99% of the time they eat it head first. They don't eat it from the back. They come in head first, and as a result, when you set the hook, almost every single hook is in the very back roof of the fish's mouth. I mean, they are hooked so perfectly every time on that rig. Now, why do I choose this over this? Very simple. If I'm up in cover, I'm here. I'm fishing heavier line, 15-pound line, even 18-pound line if it's heavy cover to drag those fish out on that super line hook. But when the going gets tough, I'm here because I can go down to light line. Now this is where rods come into play. This is one of the techniques where high-end gear makes a difference. Now it's not to say that you can't throw a nose hook fluke on anything. You can tie it on any spinning rod and you can throw it. But because the bait itself doesn't weigh that much and it's awkward in the air, it is much easier to throw it on a smoother reel and on a rod that's a little bit longer with a very soft tip. Okay, that soft tip section will help whip that bait and it will get you the distance. Because again, when I'm throwing the nose hook, I'm throwing this on either 6 or 8-pound line or 7-pound line, actually quite a bit. I can go much lighter on my line, smaller on my hook. The bulk of the bait has no hook at all. It's very natural in the water. And when it's high sun, slick conditions, they are far more likely to eat this than a bright, shiny, reflective bait with all those hooks hanging down below it. See the difference? Also, I throw the jerkbait on a little bit heavier line. This, I'm throwing such light line, you can just get those bites when they won't eat any other bait. They'll follow a jerkbait up to you, especially in that clear water. You'll see them behind it, but then they just turn it loose. That's when it's time to go nose hook fluke to get those fish. And again, you plant a single hook in the back roof of the mouth every time. I throw this on a twin power reel, which is, I think, the highest end reel on a medium price that I've found in the industry, if that makes any sense. You're talking about a reel that feels like a Stella, that feels like a $600 or $700 reel, but you're half that. So it's a high-end reel. A twin power is a high-end reel, but it's half the price of the ultra high-end reels, but you get a lot of those benefits. It's super smooth. I get really long cast distance out of it. Paired with a rod with that soft tip, it makes this technique a lot more fun to fish because you're not struggling to get it out there. And again, light line makes all the difference too. If you're throwing it on braid to leader, I'm throwing like 8 or 10 pound braid to that 6 to 8 pound leader. If I'm throwing it on straight fluoro, just throw a straight 6 to 8 pound fluoro. You can do either one. I like braid to leader. You can see the braid on the spool, because that far away, I want a good positive hook set when I hit those fish. I want to know I buried that hook. Now, back to this guy. Here's another tip for you this time of year that will make a huge difference. So I already told you that 610 medium X Pride at any price point, any rod, anywhere in the industry, this is the best jerkbait rod I've ever found. I preach that constantly, but you can almost never get them. It took me over a year to get my last one, and they're finally back. Now, that said, I typically pair it with an Aldebaran, but if you pair it to any like 70 size reel, you'll be good to go. You can make a good long cast with it. I typically jerkbait on 12 pound Assassin. That's the line I use. It's fluorocarbon, straight fluoro. I used to throw it on braid to leader, and sometimes I still do, but more and more for the jerkbait, I've been leaning to fluoro the last year or so. I typically throw it on 12 pound, but this time of year, especially if you're post spawn, I drop it down to 10 pound just to try and get more bites out of those fish. And that makes a big difference for me. So I'm throwing 10 pound fluoro on my bait casting setup, and then I'm throwing 6 to 8 pound on the spinning rod on that nose hook, and you can catch a lot of fish doing it. Again, the key to this technique is that you're drawing a core response. This is a weird year all over the country. We've had these crazy temperature swings. We've had snowstorms come in. You know, it's all over the place. And when fish are in the highs and lows like that, a bait that can get a core response, that can get a feed response, will take you a long way when you would otherwise be struggling. So if you haven't been throwing either the jerkbait or the fluke, add it into your arsenal. I think you'll really appreciate it for the next month or two or beyond, as you're seeing those fish feeding coming into the spawn, as well as schooling up and ambushing going out of the spawn before we get into those true summer patterns. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.